My adopted sister falsely accused me of SA. 7 years later, the truth is out, and now they're begging for my help. Before we begin the story, take a moment to support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your support means the world to our channel and helps us spread more shocking true stories to light. Now, let's get started. A perfect life on the surface. To understand what happened to me, you need to know where I came from. I'm Jake, 28 years old. I grew up in what looked like the perfect family. We lived in an upper-middle-class neighborhood just outside of Chicago. My parents had it all together, at least that's what it seemed like from the outside. My dad was a financial advisor at a prestigious firm downtown, making enough money to give us a comfortable lifestyle. My mom worked part-time as a realtor, but honestly, her real job was what she called maintaining the family image. That meant being involved in every community event, making sure our Christmas cards were picture-perfect, and ensuring our family looked flawless to everyone around us. And me? I was their only biological child, the golden boy, the one who made them proud. I got straight A's without much effort. I was naturally athletic. I was the polite kid who adults loved. Sure, I wasn't perfect. I snuck beers with friends, went to some wild parties, but nothing that ever truly tarnished the family reputation my mom worked so hard to uphold. Then, when I was 10, everything changed. My parents adopted a little girl. When Lily came into our lives, Lily was 3 years old when my parents adopted her. I still remember the day they brought her home. She was this tiny thing with big brown eyes that could melt anyone's heart in an instant. She barely spoke, just clung to my mom's neck like her life depended on it. And within minutes, she had everyone wrapped around her little finger. I like to say I was thrilled to have a sister, but the truth? I was a little jerk about it. Before Lily, I was the center of attention. Everything was about me, my grades, my sports, my achievements. But suddenly, it was all about Lily. Lily's first day of preschool. Lily's first dance recital. Lily's cute new outfit. Looking back, I know now that it was just normal sibling jealousy. But at the time, it felt like I was being replaced. Over the years, I thought we developed a decent relationship. Nothing special, but normal. We fought sometimes, sure, but I always had her back when it mattered. One time, when Lily was in second grade, this little punk at her school kept pulling her hair and pushing her around on the playground. By then, I was in ninth grade, so I walked her to school one day and had a little chat with him. Let's just say he never bothered her again. I even taught her a few basic self-defense moves, how to throw a proper punch if she absolutely needed to. Because that's what big brothers do, right? They look out for their little sisters. At least, that's what I thought. The life I was building. By the time I was 22, I was on top of the world. I was in my senior year of college, captain of our Division II baseball team, and had real prospect for making it. Maybe not the major leagues, but at least the minors. If that didn't pan out, I had a solid plan B. I was studying business administration with a minor in finance, pulling a 3.85 GPA, and already had a foot in the door at one of Chicago's biggest investment firms, thanks to my dad's connections. I had great friends, the kind of guys who would pick you up at 3 a.m. if your car broke down. I spent hours in the gym, lifting seriously since high school. I was in the best shape of my life, broad shoulders, strong frame, visible abs year-round. Not trying to sound cocky, just painting a picture. I dated here and there, but nothing serious. My focus was on my future. Graduate, maybe play ball a little longer, land a great job, eventually settle down with the right girl, start a family. That was the plan. But Lily? She was 15 now, a sophomore in high school, and completely different from me. She had become this artsy, dramatic theater kid, always in some school play, always overreacting about something. But that's just teenagers, right? She had her own friends, her own life. We still had dinner together whenever I was home from college, catching up, talking about school. Normal sibling stuff. Or at least, that's what I thought. Looking back now, I see the signs I missed. How she'd get quiet when mom and dad bragged about my baseball achievements. How she'd make little comments about how easy I had it. How she sometimes made up these wild, elaborate stories about things at school that just didn't add up. But hindsight is 20/20ths. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Until the day everything fell apart. The accusation that destroyed my life. It was a Tuesday in October, just another brutal practice day. We had lost a weekend series to our biggest rivals, and Coach wasn't happy. He ran us into the ground. Sprints, drills, extra bullpen sessions. By the time we were done, my legs felt like jelly, my shoulder ached from throwing, but in a good way, the kind of exhaustion that made you feel alive. I hit the showers, changed into jeans and a hoodie, and checked my phone on the way out to my truck. 37 missed calls, 54 text messages, and all of them were bad. You sick freak. How could you? You're dead to us. I felt my stomach drop. My first thought? Someone had died. Maybe my grandparents. Maybe an accident. Something horrible. I called my dad immediately. What the hell is going on? His voice was cold. Colder than I had ever heard it. Get your ass home. Now. And don't you dare go anywhere else. Then he hung up. I stood there in the parking lot, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. Call my mom. No answer. Call my best friend from high school. Someone who still lived near my parents. No answer. It was like the entire world had suddenly decided I didn't exist. I got in my truck and started the 20-minute drive home, my stomach in knots the entire way. NPR was playing on the radio, but I couldn't focus on a single word. When I pulled into the driveway, I knew something was wrong. Uncle Mike's truck was there, and so were several other cars. The moment my family turned on me, I barely had time to put my truck in park before my Uncle Mike came storming off the front porch. He was a big guy, construction worker, rough around the edges, always had a temper. But I had never seen him like this. His face was twisted with pure rage. Before I could even step out, he yanked my door open, grabbed me by the hoodie, and slammed me against the side of my truck. I'm gonna kill you, you sick piece of... His breath reeked of beer. His spit hit my face as he screamed. I could have fought back easily. I was 22, an athlete in peak condition, and Mike was a 50-year-old out-of-shape contractor. But I was too stunned to react. Before he could take a swing, my dad and Uncle Steve pulled him off me. Inside. Now. My dad's voice was like steel. He didn't even look me in the eye. I swallowed hard and walked up the steps into our living room. And that's when I knew. The house was packed. Mom sat on the couch, eyes swollen and red from crying. Both sets of grandparents were there, looking grim. Aunts, uncles, even a few close family friends. And then there was Lily. She was curled up against my grandma, sobbing into her shoulder. The second I stepped inside, the whole room went silent. Every single person was staring at me with this mix of horror, disgust, and fury. My blood ran cold. What the hell was happening? I turned to my mom. What's going on? She looked up at me, her face twisted with rage and disgust. How could you? She spat. Your own sister? I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice coming out weaker than I wanted. That's when my dad stepped forward. His usual calm, financial advisor demeanor was completely gone. He looked like he wanted to tear me apart. Lily told us everything, he said, voice shaking with anger. How you've been sneaking into her room at night. For years. The accusation hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I couldn't breathe. The room started spinning. What? That's insane. I never touched her. I looked around the room, desperate for someone, anyone, to see how ridiculous this was. Lily let out a broken sob. You said no one would believe me. You said you'd hurt me if I told. You said it was our secret. My vision blurred with pure shock. I couldn't even form words. That's complete bull. I never said that. I never touched her. No one was listening. Uncle Mike lunged at me again, but my dad and Uncle Steve held him back. My buddy's a cop, Mike snarled. You're going to prison. And trust me, they'll love you in there. I tried to defend myself. To make them see reason. But it was like talking to a wall. Lily kept adding more details. More lies. She said it started when she was 10, when I was home from high school for Christmas break. Said it happened dozens of times. Said I threatened her. Said I told her I'd hurt Mom and Dad if she ever told anyone. Every word out of her mouth was a complete fabrication. But everyone was nodding, consoling her, glaring at me. And then Dad snapped. He hit me. A full force right hook. It caught me square in the jaw, and I went down hard, tasting blood where my teeth cut into my cheek. I lay there on the floor, stunned, head ringing. And then his voice low, seething. Get your things and get out. You're no son of mine. vanished and left to rot. I barely had time to register what had happened before my mom was shoving trash bags full of my clothes toward me. They had already packed my things. They had decided I was guilty before I even stepped through the door. Dad grabbed my wallet and pulled out every card with his name on it. Credit cards, health insurance, everything. Dad, please. I begged, my voice raw. This isn't true. You know me. You've known me my whole life. I would never do something like this. He didn't answer. He just grabbed me by my shirt, dragged me to the front door, and threw me down the steps. I landed hard on my shoulder, pain exploding through my body as something popped. I'd later find out it was a minor separation. The trash bags came flying after me. Then my baseball gear. If you ever come near this family again, I'll kill you myself. The door slammed shut. And just like that, I was nothing to them. I sat there on the lawn, blood dripping from my split lip, shoulder throbbing, vision still blurry from the punch. Neighbors were peeking out through their windows, watching, whispering. No one helped me. No one said a word. I had just lost everything in less than an hour. That night, I had nowhere to go. I drove to the baseball field and parked in the empty lot. My jaw was swollen. My face hurt. My shoulder ached so badly I could barely move. I sat there in the dark, replaying the scene over and over, trying to understand why. Why Lily would do this. Why my parents didn't even question it. Why no one, not one single person, had believed me. I barely slept. The next morning, my phone was still silent. No calls. No messages. I tried. I texted. I called. I emailed. I reached out to my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, anyone in my family. Nothing. Except for one text from my dad. Contact us again, and I'll file a restraining order. You're dead to us. My teammate, Ryan, let me crash on his couch for a week. His roommates weren't thrilled, but they tolerated me. He kept telling me to go to the police, to file a report against my dad for hitting me, to fight back. But I couldn't, because deep down I still thought, maybe they'd come to their senses. Maybe they'd realize how ridiculous this was. Maybe my mom would call and say, I'm so sorry. We made a mistake. But no one called. Instead, 2 weeks later, I got an email from my university. My tuition payment hadn't gone through. My parents had canceled it. Mid-semester, I went to the financial aid office, begging for an emergency loan. No co-signer. No credit history. No options. I had to drop to part-time status, just so I could work full-time to afford what little tuition I could pay on my own. At first, my baseball coach was understanding. But when I started missing practices because of my job, working security at a bar, he had no choice. I got benched. Then I barely played. Then I was off the team. My GPA plummeted from a 3.85 to barely passing. My friends started avoiding me. I knew why. Rumors had spread. Someone in my family had told someone who told someone else. No one called me a predator to my face, but I saw it in their eyes. Girls moved away from me if I sat too close in class. Conversations stopped when I entered a room. People whispered behind my back. For months later, my truck broke down. Cracked engine block. Thousands to fix. I couldn't afford it. Lost my delivery job. Lost my apartment. And just like that, I was homeless. Rock bottom. I never thought I'd end up homeless. 1 year earlier, I was a college athlete, a top student, a guy with a bright future. Now I was sleeping in the baseball team's equipment shed because I had nowhere else to go. Coach had given me the code to the shed when I was still on the team. He probably never imagined I'd end up living there. I showered in the locker room. I used the last of my meal plan for one cafeteria meal a day. At night, I slept on a pile of gym mats, using my duffel bag as a pillow. It was winter. Some nights, the cold was unbearable. One night in February, Coach found me there. He didn't yell. Didn't ask why, just stood in the doorway, watching me try to stay warm under 3 hoodies. Finally, he sat down next to me on the floor. Son, what the hell happened to you? I broke. I told him everything. The accusation. My parents throwing me out. Losing school, losing my job, losing everything. When I finished, he didn't say I was lying. He didn't say he believed me, either. He just nodded. Then he said, you can stay here until the end of the semester. After that, we'll figure something out. The next day, he brought me a space heater, a real air mattress. Invited me to dinner at his house once a week. His wife always packed leftovers for me to take back to the shed. It wasn't much, but it was something. For the first time in months, someone gave a damn. I made it through the semester. Barely. Graduated with a pathetic 2.1 GPA. No job. No future. No family. Coach hooked me up with a summer job, working as a guide at a wilderness program for troubled teens in Colorado. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I took the job. It paid cash, provided housing, and kept me fed. The work was brutal. Hiking mountains, building shelters, chopping wood. But it rebuilt me. I put on 15 pounds of solid muscle in 6 months. At night, I drank myself into oblivion. On days off, I experimented with anything I could get my hands on. Weed, acid, shrooms, coke. I didn't care. I just wanted to feel nothing. Then one day, one of the kids in the program died. A climbing accident, and I could have prevented it. But I was too busy nursing a hangover. The program director pulled me aside. You're one of our best guides when you're on, but you're a liability when you're like this. I can't have you responsible for kids' lives when you're self-destructing. I got fired the next day. Deserved it. For the next year, I lived out of my car, a 1998 Honda Civic I bought for $1,200 cash. Worked whatever jobs I could find. Bouncer, bar security, construction, any job that didn't ask too many questions about my past. I avoided women completely. Avoided families. If a kid sat too close to me at a restaurant, I left. The fear of being accused again? Paralyzing. I had nightmares. In them, I was in prison. The other inmates found out why I was there. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding so hard it felt like a heart attack. I told myself I was surviving, but I wasn't. I was rotting. One night, while working security at a college bar in Fort Collins, I recognized someone. An old football player from my university. He recognized me, too. Started whispering to his friends. By the end of the night, they were glaring at me, making comments just loud enough for me to hear. Sick freak. Predator. Someone should teach him a lesson. I ignored it. Did my job. At 2 a.m., I walked to my car. They were waiting. 3 of them. They jumped me. Called me a pedophile, a predator. So they were going to make sure I couldn't hurt anyone else. I fought back. Landed some solid punches. Broke one guy's nose. But it was 3 against 1. And they had the element of surprise. I ended up with 3 broken ribs. A fractured eye socket. A dislocated shoulder. A concussion. Someone pulled into the parking lot, and they ran off. The driver called an ambulance. I spent 2 nights in the hospital. Then I got the bill. $177,000. No health insurance. No way to pay. I had lost my job. I was in pain. I had nowhere to go. And that's when I decided I was done. The night I almost ended it all. It was raining. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My ribs throbbed. My face ached. Every breath was painful. I had no home, no job, no family, no future. And now I had a hospital bill I'd never be able to pay. I was done. I drove out of town to an old bridge, high enough that if I jumped, there'd be no second chances. I parked the Civic, left the keys inside, and walked to the middle of the bridge. The water below was black, churning. Cold rain soaked through my clothes, but I barely felt it. I pulled out my phone. No messages. 3 years. 3 years of silence from my family. No one cared. Not one of them had ever checked if I was alive. I stared down at the water. And then, a voice behind me. Bit cold for a swim, don't you think? I startled so badly I almost slipped. Gripping the railing with my good arm, I turned to see an old man. Had to be in his 70s. Wearing a rain jacket, holding a fishing pole like this was the most normal conversation in the world. Go away, I muttered. He didn't move. Can't do that, son. See, if I go away and you jump, that makes me responsible in a way. And I don't much like that feeling. I clenched my jaw. My ribs screamed in pain. It's not your problem. Became my problem when I saw you, he said simply. He moved closer, not threatening, just steady. My name's Frank, retired Marine Corps. Seen plenty of men at their breaking point. You want to tell me what's got you standing on the wrong side of this railing? I scoffed. You wouldn't understand. Try me. I don't know why I started talking. Maybe because I figured I'd be dead soon anyway. Maybe because he was a stranger who wasn't looking at me like a monster. Maybe because there was something in his eyes. Something that reminded me of my grandfather, the only person in my family who might have believed me. So I told him everything. The accusation, being thrown out, losing my future, the years of homelessness, violence, and fear. He listened, never interrupted, just nodded. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then he said something I'll never forget. Son, you've been carrying this alone long enough. Put down the weight, just for one night. Come have a hot meal, dry clothes, and we'll talk about it with clear heads tomorrow. I swallowed hard. Why would you help someone like me? You don't even know if I'm telling the truth. Frank mit my eyes. Been reading men's faces for 50 years. In combat and in peace. You're either telling the truth or you're the best damn liar I've ever met. Either way, dead is permanent. Food isn't. I could have ignored him. Could have jumped anyway. Some days I wonder why I didn't. But something about his certainty, his calm in the middle of my storm, made me step back over that railing. Frank's house was small but spotless. Everything perfectly in place. Shoes lined up with military precision. Bookshelves flawlessly arranged. He handed me dry clothes that had belonged to his son, who had died in Afghanistan. Told me to take a hot shower while he cooked. That night, for the first time in years, I actually slept. Not in a truck, not in a shed, not in a parking lot. On a real couch, in a warm house. The next morning, he made me breakfast. Eggs, bacon, coffee so strong it could wake the dead. Then he offered me a job. I own a small security firm. Executive protection, event security, some specialized work. I need a young, strong guy who can take orders and keep his mouth shut. I frowned. Why would you trust me? You just met me. I was about to kill myself on a bridge. Frank looked me in the eye. Because a man pushed to the edge, who chooses to step back, has something worth living for, even if he doesn't know it yet. And because if you screw me over, I know exactly how to find you. For the first time in years, I had a purpose. For the next 6 months, I lived in Frank's guest room, worked for his company. He was a hard ass. 5 a.m. workouts, strict rules, no drinking on work nights, made me go to the doctor for my injuries, paid the bills himself. You can pay me back when you're on your feet. But he was fair, paid me well, taught me finance, taught me how to dress and talk to high-end clients, taught me how to be professional again. He also made me see a therapist, a Vietnam vet buddy of his. I resisted. Frank wasn't having it. You got your bell rung, son. Not just physically. You need to get your head straight if you're going to work for me. Therapy helped. Slowly, I started to believe that what happened wasn't my fault. That I wasn't broken beyond repair. After 6 months, I had saved enough for my own place. Nothing fancy, just clean, safe mind. I started taking classes again, community college, business management, security, certifications. Frank became like the father I had lost. He never told me to reach out to my family. Never said I should clear my name. Just said, some battles aren't worth fighting. Focus on the war, building a life they can't take away from you. So that's what I did. The woman who changed everything. A year into working for Frank, he sent me on a job. My niece is opening an art gallery. Needs security for the event. Do it as a favor to my sister. At first, I thought nothing of it. Just another gig. Stand around, keep an eye on the crowd, make sure no drunk rich guy stumbles too close to the paintings. Then I met her. Her name was Sophie, and she was nothing like I expected. Frank had described her as smart as a whip and doesn't take crap from anyone, which was accurate, but incomplete. She was striking, not in a magazine cover way, but in a way that commanded attention. Tall, athletic, dark hair cut in an asymmetrical style that framed her face perfectly. But it was her eyes that got me. Sharp, intense, like she could see straight through whatever mask I was wearing. We didn't exactly hit it off. She took one look at me, dressed in my security uniform, and wrote me off as just another big, brainless bouncer. I wrote her off as a pretentious art snob. During the event, I overheard her explaining some abstract painting to a potential buyer. The guy listened, nodded, then walked away without purchasing. She rolled her eyes. I smirked. Not everyone gets it. She turned to me, giving me a once-over. And you do? No, but I'm not pretending to either. She almost smiled. Almost. Honesty. Refreshing. Throughout the night, I caught her watching me. Not like a person who thinks the security guy might steal something, but with curiosity. At the end of the night, as I was doing a final sweep, she approached me. Uncle Frank says you're more than just muscle. I shrugged. Your uncle talks too much. She laughed. A real laugh, not the fake social laugh I'd heard all night. Actually, he barely talks at all, which is why when he does, people listen. She tilted her head. He says you're in school. Business management, right? I nodded. Plus some specialized security certifications. Interesting combination. Tell me about it. And for the first time in years, I had a real conversation. We talked until 2 a.m. Not about my past. Not about the hell I'd been through. About art, music, travel, politics. She was fiercely intelligent, opinionated, passionate. She challenged me in all the right ways. As I was leaving, she handed me her card. I have a security issue in my condo. Locks need upgrading. Maybe you could give me a consultation. It was an excuse, but I took it. That consultation turned into dinner. Dinner turned into movie nights. Movie nights turned into weekends together. Sophie was different from anyone I'd ever met. She was independent, sharp, unapologetically herself. But in quiet moments, she let her guard down. I could tell she had been hurt too. Not the same way as me, but pain recognizes pain. For months, I avoided talking about my family. I made up vague stories when she asked. Told her my parents had died in a car accident. That I was an only child. She knew I was hiding something, but she never pushed. Then one night, Frank sat me down. That girl is falling for you, he said, and you're falling for her. She deserves the truth before it goes any further. He was right. So over dinner in my apartment, I told her everything. The accusation, being disowned, the years of hell. When I finished, I waited for her to leave, to look at me differently, to have that seed of doubt that maybe, just maybe, Lily hadn't been lying. Instead, she reached across the table, took my hand, and said 3 words. I believe you. I broke. Right there at the dinner table, I sobbed like a child. And she just held me. Let me finally let it all out. 2 years later, I proposed. Did it right, down on one knee, in the same place we had our first real date. Frank walked her down the aisle. Her father had passed years earlier, so Frank stepped in. We bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood. I finished my degree, became a partner in Frank's firm. We expanded, went from local security to regional, then national contracts. Sophie's our career took off. We built something real, something that couldn't be taken away. For the first time in 7 years, I felt like I had a future. I still thought about my family, wondered if they ever doubted Lily's story, if they ever regretted what they had done. But I had accepted that chapter was closed. I had a new family now, people who chose me, people who stood by me, and that was enough. Or so I thought, until one random Tuesday in March. I was in my office, reviewing security protocol for a billionaire tech CEO visiting for a conference. My assistant buzzed me. Sir, you have a call on line 1. A woman. She wouldn't give her name, but she says it's a family emergency. My heart stopped. I thought of Sophie, of Frank. Put her through. I picked up the phone. This is Jake. Silence. Then a soft sob, and a voice I hadn't heard in 7 years. Jake, it's Mom. I felt ice crawl down my spine. I hadn't heard her voice since the day they threw me out. I wanted to hang up, but before I could, she whispered. Lily confessed. She lied about everything. The world stopped. 7 years. 7 years of pain. Of rebuilding my life from nothing. 7 years of nightmares and therapy and homelessness and fear. All because of a lie. I gripped the phone so hard my hand shook. Mom's voice was pleading. Jake, are you there? I hung up. Then I walked out of my office, got in my car, and drove to Frank's house. Well, I told him, he just nodded. What do you want to do? I clenched my jaw. I don't know. Frank with my eyes. Yes, you do. You just don't know if it's the right thing. And he was right. Facing the people who betrayed me. For 2 weeks, I ignored the calls. They kept coming. From my mom. From my dad. Even from relatives who had cut me off years ago. I didn't answer a single one. I talked it through with Sophie. With my therapist. With Frank. Did I even want to hear them out? A part of me wanted to leave them in the past. To never give them the chance to speak to me again. But another part, The part that had spent 7 years suffering for a crime I didn't commit. Needed to face them. Not for them. For me. I needed to hear it from their mouths. Needed to see them squirm. So I sent one text to my mother. Public place. Coffee shop on Main Street. Sunday, 2 p.m. Just you, Dad, and Lily. I'll have people with me. One chance only. Sunday came. Frank insisted on coming as backup. Sophie was by my side, gripping my hand so tightly it almost hurt. We got there early and took a table in the back corner where I could see all the exits. Old security habit. My stomach was in knots. Part of me expected them to not show. Or worse, to set me up somehow. Sophie kept checking on me. We can leave anytime. Just say the word. Then at exactly 2 p.m. they walked in, and I almost didn't recognize them. My mother looked older. Her once perfectly styled hair was now more gray than brown. Her face lined with stress. My father, who had always been so proud of his tailored suits, now wore khakis and a wrinkled button-down that had seen better days. He looked like a man who had lost everything. And Lily, she wasn't the same girl I remembered. At 22, she looked smaller, thinner. The usual dramatic flair in her expression was gone. She stared at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes. The second my mom saw me, she rushed forward, arms outstretched for a hug. I stepped back, putting Sophie slightly between us. Sit. They did. No one spoke for what felt like an eternity. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. Son, I'm not your son. I cut him off. You made that very clear 7 years ago. Now talk. Why am I here? Mom started crying. Dad looked broken. And Lily, she still wouldn't look at me. Then Dad spoke. 3 months ago, Lily called a family meeting. She told us that she had lied. About everything. I turned to Lily. Look at me. Slowly, she lifted her eyes. Red from crying. My voice was cold. Why? Her hands trembled. I was jealous. I almost laughed. Jealous. She nodded. You were the perfect son. Smart. Athletic. Everyone loved you. Mom and Dad gave you everything. I wanted them to love me more. To pay attention to me. My stomach turned. I leaned forward. So you accuse me of something that could have sent me to prison? You destroyed my life because you wanted more attention. She swallowed hard. I didn't think it would go that far. I thought they'd just get mad at you. Maybe ground you. But then everyone started asking questions, and I couldn't take it back. And then it just kept going. People were so nice to me, giving me things, making me feel special. I didn't know how to stop it. I clenched my fists. My entire body was shaking. I turned to my parents. And you too? They looked at me, ashamed, silent. I slammed my hand on the table. The whole coffee shop went dead quiet. People were pretending not to listen, but they were. You threw me out without even listening to me. Without any proof. Did you even bother to check? Did you even look at the dates? She accused me. I wasn't even home during one of them. I was at a baseball tournament in Denver. There were pictures all over social media. Mom covered her mouth. Dad paled. I let out a bitter laugh. You know what happened after you disowned me? I pulled out my phone. Showed them pictures. Me with a split lip and black eye from the bar fight. Me looking emaciated during my homeless period. Hospital records for my $177,000 medical bill. I lost everything. I lived in a damn baseball equipment shed. I almost froze to death. I got beaten half to death. I stood on a bridge, ready to jump, because the family that was supposed to love me treated me like a monster without a second thought. Mom sobbed. Dad looked like he'd been punched in the gut. We're so sorry. Mom cried. We made a terrible mistake. We want to make it right. I laughed. A sharp, hollow sound. Make it right? How exactly do you plan to do that? Give me back 7 years of my life? Erase the trauma? Undo the nights I spent sleeping in my car, terrified of being accused again? Silence. Then Dad muttered, We want you to come home. We want our family back together. I shook my head. That's not happening. I have a family now. I looked at Sophie, at Frank, people who actually stood by me. That's when Lily spoke again. There's something else you should know. After she confessed, everything changed. My parents cut her off. They sold the BMW they had bought her when she was 16. Meanwhile, I was sleeping in a truck. She had to drop out of her expensive private university. Dad's company took a massive hit after bad investments. They lost their house, downsized to a condo. Mom's social standing in the community was ruined when people found out Lily had lied, and now they were struggling. "We need your help, Jake," Mom admitted. "Your father's business is failing. We're going to lose the condo. Lily can't afford to continue school. We've had to sell almost everything." There it was. They didn't want forgiveness. They wanted money. I allowed a sharp breath. "So let me get this straight. You destroy my life, throw me away, leave me homeless. And now that I've built something for myself, you want me to bail you out?" Dad's voice was weak. "We're family." "No, we're not." I stood up. "You made your choice 7 years ago. Now you can live with it." Lily's voice was desperate. "Please, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but Mom and Dad shouldn't have to suffer for my mistake." I stared at her. "You're right. They shouldn't suffer for your mistake. They should suffer for their own." I turned to my parents. "I forgive Lily. She was a child who made a terrible decision. But you two, you were adults. You were supposed to protect both your children. Instead, you threw one away without a second thought." I pulled out my wallet, threw some cash on the table for the coffee, and walked out. Mom grabbed my arm. "Please don't leave it like this. What do you want from us?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "I want you to remember what it feels like to have everything taken away from you. Maybe then you'll understand what you did to me." Then I walked away, moving forward and final thoughts. That was 2 years ago. I haven't spoken to them since. But I've heard things. Through mutual connections, I found out my parents lost the condo. My dad, once a high-power financial advisor, now works at a big-box retail store. My mom, who spent years obsessing over our family image, cleans houses for a living. Lily? She dropped out of school completely, moved to another state. No one knows what she's doing now. And me? I moved on. Sophie and I are expecting our first child. We're expanding the security firm into 3 new states. We built something real, something no one can take from us. For the first time in my life, I'm truly happy. But every now and then, I wonder if I should reach out to Lily. I wonder if forgiving them all would be the final step in my healing. Sophie says it's up to me, that whatever I choose, she's by my side. Frank says some wounds don't need to be reopened. Some people don't deserve a second chance. And I think he might be right. I know people will ask, will I ever let my parents meet their grandchild? I don't know. Will they be in the delivery room? Absolutely not. Will they ever babysit? Hell no. But maybe one day, if they get therapy, take responsibility, and prove they've truly changed, maybe I'll consider supervised visits. Maybe. But for now, my priority is the family I built. The people who chose me. The people who stood by me when it mattered most. And that's more than enough. Some of you might think I'm being too harsh. That I should help Lily. That I should forgive my parents. Maybe you're right. But let me ask you this. If this happened to you, could you forgive them? Could you look into the eyes of the people who threw you away and say, it's okay? Because I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But what I do know is, I survived. I rebuilt. And I will never let anyone take that away from me again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you in the next one.